My wife betrayed me by sleeping with her boss and then manipulated me into signing away our $500, $0 family home during a heated fight, only to discover she planned the affair from the start. Now she's lining her pockets while I fight for everything. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here writing about how my wife completely shattered everything I thought I knew about our life together. It all started so normal, married for over 10 years, 2 kids, a nice house, a good job. We seemed like the perfect couple. But then, subtle signs started creeping in. Little things, she'd be secretive with her phone, staying late at work more often, and when I'd ask, she'd brush it off with a bitchy attitude or some excuse about needing to impress her boss. I shrugged it off at first, convincing myself I was paranoid or imagining things. I mean, she's always been a little high maintenance, a little bitchy, but I loved her. Then came the first real red flag. I noticed her phone kept getting more and more guarded. She'd hide it when I entered the room and her messages suddenly became more vague. One night I saw her texting someone late at night, something about meeting up after work and don't forget the plan. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Who was she meeting? Why was she lying? I decided to dig a little. Nothing crazy, just a quick peek at her phone when she was asleep. That's when I saw it, a string of messages between her and her boss, Jason. They were clearly more than just professional. Flirty, suggestive, even explicit at times. I felt my stomach drop. My wife, the woman I trusted, was sleeping with her boss. Jason was a smooth operator, always charming her at work, buying her lunches, complimenting her looks. I saw pictures of her taken at some fancy restaurant, smiling like she was on a date. I couldn't believe it. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Did I miss the signs? Was I so oblivious? The worst part was knowing that had been lying to me this entire time. She'd manipulate me, call me paranoid when I asked questions, tell me I was overthinking. She'd say she loved me, that she'd never do anything to hurt me, but the evidence painted a different picture. It was like a betrayal on a level I'd never experienced. I was furious, hurt, and confused all at once. I didn't know whether to confront her immediately or gather my thoughts, but I knew I couldn't stay silent. One evening, I finally decided to confront her. I waited until she came home from work, heart pounding. I had all the evidence on my phone, screenshots of the messages, photos, everything. I knew I had to face her face to face. When she walked in, she looked tired, a little defensive. I asked her about her phone, about her late nights, about Jason. Her reaction was instant. She rolled her eyes and snapped, "You're overreacting. You're always accusing me of stuff. You're paranoid." She lied, of course. Said Jason was just a friend, that I was making everything up. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I laid out everything I knew, the messages, the photos, the times I'd caught her lying, her face twisted with anger, contempt. She spat back that I was a jealous idiot, that I was imagining things, that I was insecure. She called me controlling, said she deserved a little fun, that I was boring. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about her manipulation, her lies, her complete disregard for what we had. The emotional hit new heights after that. I felt betrayed on every level. The love I'd had for her turned into a mix of rage and sadness. I kept thinking about all the years we spent together, the promises, the family we built. And all the while she was planning her escape, lining her pockets, probably planning to leave me with nothing. The house, our savings, everything. I found out she had secretly been siphoning money from our account, stashing it away so she could leave comfortably. This wasn't just a fling. It was calculated, deliberate. She planned this from the start, I'm sure of it now. The way she manipulated me during that fight, gaslighting and lying, she knew exactly what she was doing. I felt so stupid for not seeing it sooner. But now, I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. I knew I had to come up with a plan, a way to fight for what's mine and protect my kids from her greed and deception. Honestly, I don't know what I expected from her, but I do know I'm done being the naive husband. She's lining her pockets while I'm left fighting for the house, for my dignity, for my sanity. I've never felt so betrayed in my life, and I don't see how I can ever trust her again. But I do know one thing, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying the moment I found out, the way her face twisted when I confronted her, the lies she spat back at me. I started to realize how much she had been manipulating me all along. The worst part was knowing she'd planned this from the start, probably even before we got married. It was like I was living next to a stranger, someone who had only pretended to love me. The first thing I did was go through our bank statements and online accounts. I wanted to see exactly how much she'd been siphoning off, how long she'd been planning this. Sure enough, I found multiple transfers, small amounts at first, then larger sums. Over the past year, she'd squirreled away close to $50, $0. I was furious. This wasn't just an affair, it was theft, betrayal on top of betrayal. She was planning her exit and she'd been lying about everything. I also started noticing small things around the house. She'd been secretly taking things, jewelry, some of the kids' savings, even personal stuff from my desk. It was like she was trying to erase any connection to me to prepare for her new life. I decided I had to act fast. I couldn't let her take everything while I was left with nothing. I reached out to a lawyer, set up a meeting, and started documenting everything: her secret bank accounts, her messages, her plans. I wanted to be ready when the time came. But the thing that hit me hardest was the emotional toll. I felt humiliated, like a fool. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I let her manipulate me so easily. I'd always been a straightforward guy, honest, yet she'd played me like a fiddle. Every time I thought about her lying, cheating, stealing from us, I felt a mix of anger and deep sadness. I'd been so invested in our marriage, in making it work, and now I saw it was all a lie. One day, I decided to confront her again, this time more assertively. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the money, her plans. She scoffed, called me paranoid, said I was overreacting. She told me Jason was just a friend, that I was jealous and insecure. But I wasn't buying her lies anymore. I laid out the evidence piece by piece. Her face turned red, then pale. She yelled, called me controlling and paranoid, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She knew she'd been caught. That was when she started spinning her usual lies. She said she was only having an affair because I'd been distant, boring, and she needed excitement. She claimed Jason was just a bad influence, that she was going to leave him soon. But I knew better. I knew she'd been planning this for months. She'd been grooming her affair partner, lining her pockets, secretly building her escape plan. She tried to manipulate me into feeling guilty, but I was done with that. The emotional aftermath hit harder than I expected. I'd loved her, trusted her. I'd built a life with her, and now I felt like I was losing everything: my wife, my home, my sense of stability. But the anger started to override the sadness. I was angry at her for the lies, for the betrayal, for the way she'd played me like a fool. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. I felt like I'd been living in a fog, and now I had to find a way out. I decided I wasn't going to be a victim of her manipulations. I knew I had to fight, not just for the house, but for my dignity and my future. I hired a lawyer, filed for divorce, and started to plan my next steps. I knew she'd try to take everything. Her greed was obvious. She wanted the house, the savings, and to leave me with nothing. But I was determined to stand my ground. I had to protect what was mine, and I couldn't let her manipulate me into giving her everything she wanted. As I look back now, I realize I was lucky I caught her when I did. It's a brutal lesson in trust and betrayal, but one I won't forget. I learned that sometimes the person you love the most can turn out to be the biggest liar. And when that happens, you have to be willing to fight for yourself, your kids, and what's rightfully yours. I don't know what's next for me, but I do know I won't let her get away with it. Not without a fight. After I gathered all the evidence and made the decision to move forward with divorce, things escalated quickly. My wife started to get desperate. She saw that I wasn't backing down, and her usual bitchy attitude turned even nastier. She'd lash out, call me paranoid, accuse me of trying to ruin her life. But I wasn't about to let her manipulate me anymore. I knew her game now. She was trying to gaslight me to make me doubt what I saw, what I knew. One afternoon, she stormed into my office, furious, yelling about how I was ruining her life, how I was unfairly accusing her of everything. She threw her phone onto the desk, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that Jason was just a good friend, and that I was jealous because she was attractive and successful. She said she deserved to have some fun, that I was boring and controlling. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I had enough. I told her I knew about her affair, her plans to steal our house, and her secret stash of money. That was the moment she froze. She started to deny everything, but I had the proof. I showed her the messages, the bank transfers, the pictures. Her face twisted with rage and panic. She snapped that I was crazy, that I was ruining everything she worked for. She accused me of being insecure and controlling, trying to guilt-trip me into backing off. But I was done with her lies. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I wanted a custody arrangement that protected the kids, and that I was going to fight to keep what was rightfully mine. The emotional toll was draining. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I kept asking myself how. I'd been so blind. How did I miss all the signs? I remembered all the little moments, her secretive phone calls, her late nights, her dismissive attitude when I brought up her behavior. It all added up now. I felt like a fool, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do. In the days that followed, I started taking steps to secure my position. I contacted a lawyer, explained everything, and began the process of separating our assets. Had been sneaky. She'd already transferred some of our savings to a separate account, and I knew she was planning to leave with as much as she could get. I kept a close eye on our bank accounts, made copies of everything, and even hired a private investigator to confirm her plans. I had to be prepared for her next move. Meanwhile, his attitude shifted from bitchy and manipulative to outright aggressive. She'd show up at the house unannounced, trying to guilt me into dropping the divorce, claiming she'd change, that she loved me, that it was all a mistake. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I could see right through her. She was only trying to buy time to keep me from taking what was hers. I knew she was scheming, trying to find ways to keep the house and the money. I also found out she'd been secretly working with a real estate agent to list the house for sale. That realization hit me hard. She was planning to sell what we built, to walk away with the cash and leave me with nothing. The thought of her lining her pockets while I fought to keep what was ours made my blood boil. I had to act fast. I contacted my own lawyer and put a freeze on the house, making it clear that I intended to contest any sale or transfer without my approval. I also started gathering evidence of her financial manipulations, so I'd have everything I needed for the legal fight ahead. The worst part was feeling powerless. She was so good at lying, at spinning stories to make herself look innocent. She kept trying to manipulate the situation, trying to turn my friends and family against me, claiming I was the bad guy. But I refused to fall for her tricks. I knew I had to stay calm, stay focused. This wasn't over yet, and I had to be prepared for whatever she threw at me next. Deep down, I was hurt. I still loved her, or at least I did. But I also knew I couldn't let her take everything from me: our home, our savings, our future. I realized that betrayal cuts deep, and trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. But I was determined to hold on to what was mine, to fight for my rights and for my kids. I just hoped I'd find a way out of this mess without losing everything. I didn't know how it would end, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going down without a fight. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles, secret meetings, and mounting frustration. His behavior grew more erratic. She'd come over, shouting, crying, accusing me of ruining her life. Her bitchy attitude was on full display every time she was in front of the kids, trying to guilt-trip me into backing down. But I knew better now. I'd seen her messages, her plans to sell the house, her attempts to drain our accounts. I wasn't about to let her walk away with everything, especially not the house that we'd built together, the place our kids called home. I spent days poring over every detail, every bank statement, every email, every text. I hired a financial advisor to help me understand how deep her manipulations went, Turns out, she'd been secretly funneling money into offshore accounts. She'd set up fake companies to hide her earnings. It was clear she'd been planning her escape for months. And I was just starting to realize the extent of her treachery. One night I caught her sneaking around the house trying to access our safe. She thought I didn't notice, but I'd been watching her for days. When I confronted her, she looked panicked. She spun some story about needing her stuff, about how she deserved a fresh start. But I knew she was trying to gather everything she could, money, jewelry, documents, to leave. That was the moment I knew I had to act fast. I called my lawyer, told him what I'd seen, and put a legal hold on the house. I also filed for an emergency hearing to prevent her from selling or transferring any assets. Her reaction was classic, bitchy, manipulative, full of lies. She claimed she was only trying to protect herself, that I was overreacting, that she loved me and only wanted a little freedom. She insisted she wasn't planning to leave yet, but her actions told a different story. I'd seen the messages, the plans, the transfers. I knew she'd been working with a real estate agent, trying to list the house without my knowledge. She'd been trying to sell the house behind my back, probably to get as much cash as possible before I caught on. That realization made me furious. I'd been so blind, trusting her, believing she was the woman I married. But she was just using me, using our marriage to line her pockets and prepare for her escape. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. How could she be so selfish, so manipulative? I'd spent years building this life, and now she was trying to take it all away. I had to do something, and fast. I started to gather witnesses, friends, family, anyone who could testify to her behavior and her manipulations. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her movements and her plans. Turns out, she'd been meeting with the real estate agent, trying to get the house listed. She'd even contacted a lawyer of her own, trying to prepare legal documents to transfer assets without my consent. It was clear she was trying to cut me out of everything. I couldn't let that happen. On top of that, I discovered she'd been secretly working on setting aside a divorce fund money she'd hidden from me in case she needed it to start over. She'd been planning her escape for a long time, and I was just starting to see the full picture. The betrayal was staggering. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, and the hurt turned into pure determination. I refused to let her take what was ours without a fight. I talked to my lawyer about filing a restraining order to stop her from entering the house or accessing our accounts. I wanted to protect myself and the kids from her greed-driven schemes. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She'd been lying for months, planning her exit behind my back, and now she was trying to pull the rug out from under me. I knew I had to stay strong, stay focused. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. In the middle of all this chaos, I couldn't help feeling a deep sense of loss, not just for the marriage, but for the trust we once had. I kept thinking about the life we'd built, the family we tried to be. And now it was all falling apart because she'd chosen greed, betrayal, and lies over everything we stood for. It hurt so much I could barely breathe some days, but I knew I had to keep going. I had to fight for my rights, for the house, for my kids. I had to protect what little stability I still had left. Every new discovery made me angrier. I realized this wasn't just about cheating. It was about her trying to rewrite our entire story, to erase the years we'd shared and start fresh on her own terms. But I wasn't going to let her do that, not without a fight. I was determined to hold on to what was mine and to make sure she paid for her lies and manipulations. I didn't know how this would end, whether I'd win or lose, but I knew one thing: I wasn't giving up, not now, not ever. The legal battles dragged on, and each day felt like a new test of my patience and resolve. True to form, became more aggressive, showing up unannounced, trying to guilt me into dropping the case. She'd cry, call me names, accuse me of trying to ruin her life. Her bitchy attitude was relentless, but I'd learned to see through her lies. She'd spin stories about how she was just trying to find herself, how I was controlling and insecure. But I had all the proof now: her secret bank accounts, the messages with Jason, the plans to sell the house behind my back. I knew her game, and I refused to let her win. One day she showed up at the house, furious, demanding I give her access to the safe. Her eyes were wild, her voice shrill. She claimed she needed her things, that she deserved to take what she wanted. I stood my ground and told her she wasn't getting near the safe or the bank accounts anymore. I'd already put a legal freeze on everything. I told her she was not going to walk away with our house or our money. That was the moment I saw her true colors. She was desperate, cornered, and dangerous. She snapped that I was ruining her life, that I was the villain in our story. But I wasn't backing down. I'd already hired a forensic accountant to track her hidden assets, and I was preparing to fight her in court. I wanted to make sure she couldn't just walk away with everything, especially not the house where our kids had grown up. I also discovered she'd been secretly transferring money to offshore accounts, trying to hide her true wealth. I was furious. She'd been planning this for months, maybe even years. She'd betrayed me, our marriage, and everything we built. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I loved her once, or I thought I did. But now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, greedy woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted. Every lie, every betrayal, cut even deeper than I'd expected. I felt betrayed not just by her actions, but by the years I'd spent trusting her. I wondered how I'd been so blind, how I'd missed all the signs. And I felt so hurt for my kids, who deserve stability and love, not a broken home torn apart by greed and betrayal. Despite everything, I stayed calm. I kept my focus on the legal fight. I worked with my lawyer to file for full custody of the kids, knowing his manipulative nature could put them in harm's way emotionally. I also made sure to document every interaction, her threats, her attempts to access our accounts, her lies. I knew I had to be prepared for her next move. She was cunning, and I couldn't allow her to manipulate her way out of this mess. Her desperation grew. She started to threaten me, accusing me of trying to ruin her reputation. She claimed I was an abusive husband, a controlling man who'd driven her to cheat and steal. But I had nothing to hide. I had kept everything transparent, proof of her manipulations, her secret transfers, her plans to sell the house. I also secretly recorded some of her angry outbursts, knowing I might need them in court. I wasn't about to let her spin her lies and walk away without consequences. Meanwhile, I was also trying to stay sane. This whole situation was a nightmare. I'd loved her, trusted her, and now I was fighting to save what little I had left. Every day brought new surprises, more schemes, more lies, more betrayals. But I refused to let her win. I knew I had to fight not just for the house or the money, but for my dignity, for my future, and for my kids' safety. I was starting to see that this wasn't just about a marriage gone wrong. It was about her greed, her manipulation, and her complete disregard for everything we'd built together. I've learned a lot through this ordeal. Trust no one blindly, keep your eyes open, and always protect yourself and your children first. I don't know how this will end, but I do know I won't let her take everything without a fight. I'll keep pushing, keep gathering evidence, and do whatever it takes to come out of this with some semblance of what we once had. Because deep down, I still believe there's a way to rebuild, even after all this damage. And I owe it to myself and my kids to try. The final stretch of this nightmare has been the most exhausting. After months of fighting, I finally managed to get a court hearing to freeze all her assets and prevent her from selling the house. Face was a mask of fury and desperation as she realized I was serious. This wasn't going to be a quick or easy win for her. She tried every trick in the book, crying, yelling, twisting facts, but I had everything documented. Her lies had unraveled completely. The judge saw through her manipulations and granted the restraining order, along with a temporary custody arrangement that kept my kids safe from her scheming. Throughout this process, I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. Relief because I finally had some control, some leverage against her greed. Heartbreak because I was losing the woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, the mother of my children. It was brutal to see her so desperate, so willing to lie and manipulate her way out of this mess. But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. Not after everything. I had to stay strong for myself, for my kids, for the future we deserved. In the end, the court awarded me full custody of the children, and we divided the assets based on the evidence I presented. The house, which she tried so hard to sell, remained mine. I managed to get her to agree to a fair settlement, including a significant financial settlement that accounts for her secret savings and offshore accounts. She was furious, but she had no choice. Her plans had been exposed, and her manipulation had failed. I felt a strange mix of victory and emptiness. Victory because I'd fought and won, emptiness because I'd lost the trust and love I once had. Looking back, I realize how I was to believe in happily ever after. But I also learned the importance of vigilance. Trust is fragile, and betrayal can come from the most unexpected places. I learned that greed and manipulation can destroy everything you work for if you're not careful. I also learned that sometimes, the best thing you can do is fight for what's right, even when it hurts. Because at the end of the day, standing up for yourself and protecting your family is what truly matters. Now I'm focusing on healing. I've started therapy, working through the anger and betrayal. My kids are adjusting slowly, but they're resilient. I've moved out of the house into a new place, and I'm slowly rebuilding my life piece by piece. It's not easy, and I still have moments of doubt and sadness, but I know I did the right thing. I don't hate, I just see her for what she is now, a woman driven by greed and lies, and I refuse to let her define my future. This whole experience has taught me one thing above all. No matter how much you love someone, you have to protect yourself. Never ignore the signs, never assume someone's loyalty is guaranteed. People can surprise you in the worst ways, but you also find strength you never knew you had when you're pushed to the edge. I hope my story serves as a cautionary tale, but also a reminder that even after the deepest betrayal, you can still find a way to move forward. Trust your instincts, hold on to your dignity, and never let anyone take more than they deserve.